Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. I'm trying a new live streaming system. I typically go from Zoom and then I live stream into YouTube, but today I'm doing it natively through YouTube. Hopefully, that doesn't sound like too much jargon. Um, Here's what I need from you. If you can hear me and see me, let me know in the chat. We're going to test if this is working. And I'm hearing feedback, so let me just adjust that. Okay, great. Well, if I'm hearing feedback, if I'm hearing myself echoing, then it's working. Yes. Okay, cool. Let me share my screen and we will get started. Okay, in today's live stream, we're going to talk about fixing these terrible dates. Okay, so in this sort of real, sort of pretend data set, we've got dates, the type of event that's obviously fictional, variable A in numbers, variable B in percentages. This column is real. This is the true export from a database from a client project that I've been working on recently. And this is a huge pain. And a lot of databases do this. They add the date and then they add like all this blah, 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 blah stuff, all this gobbledygook stuff. And I'm going to show you why this doesn't work and why we have to fix it first. It's for graphing. Like you can't graph this. Let's say you wanted to know, how many apples events there were and how many banana events there were over time. If you wanted to know how many of variable A over time, you can't do it with this. If you want to know like the average of variable B over time, you can't do it with this. So this column is totally unusable in that format. Okay, so here's what happens if you try to add a pivot table to analyze this data. I'm going to just click on the cell in the upper left corner, which is A1 in this case, and I'm going to go to Insert, Pivot Table, add it to a new worksheet. I'm going to rename it so that Emery doesn't lose her mind. Everybody taking online courses with me knows that I'm a big fan of staying nice and organized. And then just like usual with pivot tables, you would drag and drop, right? So let's say you want to know like how many apples and oranges events there were, or how many of like variable A by apples and bananas, etc. Okay, if you want to add in the date anywhere in this pivot table, this is what happens, right? It just gives you every single entry. It doesn't sum them up. It should be saying how many things in 2023, how many things in 2024, how many things in January versus February versus March. Okay, so Excel is not recognizing these as a date. This format is garbage for pivot tables. You can also do formulas like COUNTIFs and SUMIFs, but it would be the same thing. The formulas would not be able to recognize like how many things in 2023 versus 2024 versus 2025. So what we have to do with these really, really long variables that like every database under the sun gives you terrible exports like this, we have to do something called parsing. And parsing is when you have a bunch of letters or numbers or characters or symbols all together in one cell, and you have to parse them apart. You have to pull them apart. And this is not an exhaustive list of techniques, but these are the main ones that came to mind in my mind. If you're watching this live or if you're watching the replay later and you have ideas of more parsing techniques I should add to this list, let me know. But like these are the biggies, okay? And I'm going to go through how to do each of these too and talk about some pros and cons. Okay, so you have to like split them apart, parse them, pull them apart, and then fine tune them to get exactly what you need and exactly Excel's language. So Excel can read it. This is like a partial list of some of those techniques that you need to use. Okay. Pros and cons at a glance. Text to columns is a button that I'm going to show you, and it has a huge learning curve. It's very jargony for people to use the first time. So I'm definitely going to put that on the cons list. On the pros side, what would the pros be? It has buttons, so you don't have to do a formula or a function. Sometimes that can be helpful for people. They like clicking through the buttons and choosing the options. However, what that means is every time you need to parse dates apart, like every time you do a new export from your data set, from your database, you would have to redo it. terrible to replicate over time. Replicate over time. It doesn't save future you a lot of anytime. Terrible for future you. What would be a pro of text to columns? I don't know. There's not much. I don't like. I guess it gives you a preview. I think there's a preview window that people like. Preview screen down below. That's nice. Kind of helps you figure out if you're doing it right. And I'm going to have to put another con here is it runs into the columns next door. Again, if you're watching live or if you're watching the replay, if you can think of more pros and cons, let me know. This is my Monday afternoon brain doing a quick brainstorm. Let me show you text to columns, and then you will probably see why the cons list is longer than the pros list. Okay, text to columns is like you click on this column to highlight it, or actually let's just click on the entries, not the date of event up top. And then you go to data, and then you go to the button called text to columns. And then this is the part that really freaks out everybody because they're like, wizard, why am I in a wizard? What is this? And you have to choose between these really jargony terms, delimited and fixed width. And it gives you a little definition, but like, who's going to read that if they're a novice? Okay. A lot of people have to do this like 5-10 times before they feel fluent in it. And I've done this 50 million times and I still have to read this and think about it. Okay. What separates like year, month, day from all the rest of that stuff? Is it a comma? No. Is it a tab? No. It's fixed width. Next. And then this is the preview window that is really nice. Like if you click right there, it shows you what's going to go in different columns. Okay. It's like all this text, letters, numbers. It could be underscores, it could be dashes, it could be the ampersand, all this stuff together. It would piece it into 2 columns. So you'd have the correct date and then all the gobbledygook that you don't need. You could parse it apart further like this. You could have the date in its own column. You could have the month in its own column, the day in its own column. It would also put all the dashes in their own column and then all the gobbledygook. You could have it in a bunch of columns. When I say next, it's going to give me an error message saying, careful, you already have stuff in column B, C, and D. It's going to like spill over and cover up the important data. So that can be annoying for novices too, because they're like, what just happened? My database or my data got all messed up. Okay, let me click next and I'll show you that error message. Let's finish. It's like, there's already data here. Do you want to cover up B, C, D? No, like we don't want to do that. So what you usually have to do text to columns correctly is you either have to like figure out how many new columns you might have like this and make space for it, or copy and paste like over here. So you're keeping the original raw data and then you're cleaning it up over here. Let me show you how text to columns works here. Okay, so your second lesson, this will feel a little bit faster the second time. You highlight the mush that you need to parse apart, data, text to columns. We're going to do a fixed width because I want to use that little clicker button to separate them. Next, and then I do my clicker like here at the bare minimum, finish, and they are split apart. And this is a bonus. I wasn't sure if Excel was going to do this or not. It does recognize those in date format. Isn't that nice? And this is like gobbledygook junk that we can just ignore. Okay, if you were to insert a pivot table now, it should work. I can't have these with the same column. What should I call this? Date of event. This is the text to columns solution. Text to columns. Okay, let's insert a pivot table and it should work so much better. So if you drag dates now into rows, oh, no, that's the original date. Sorry, text to columns. The text to columns dates into rows. See how it accurately recognizes the years, which is good, okay? It also recognizes the quarters. That's a newish thing in Excel, which is nice. It also recognizes the months. You can open all of these up manually and get the level of detail you need, or you can right click and you could expand all of them that way. Then you can drag and drop, like you could see how many variable A things by type. Maybe you don't want quarters. Maybe that's too granular. Maybe you don't even want months. Maybe that's too granular. Maybe you definitely wouldn't want like the exact day. Maybe you just want by years, you know? And then this could feed into a graph, okay? I think I made up random numbers here, like literally with the rand between function. So I don't know any, yeah, we're gonna get like no patterns here. There's no interesting patterns. It's kind of like the ugliest graph in the world, but you can graph it, right? Now you can graph it because these are the date format. Okay, so text to columns works. It works. That definitely helps parse things apart. That was the first parsing technique that I ever learned back in the day. But you know, there's a learning curve. Maybe it's not a huge learning curve. Maybe it's like a medium learning curve. It is terrible to replicate over time, because the next time you do an export, you'd have to do it again. And the next time you do an export, you have to do it again. It does run into the columns next door. And you know what? Another con is I don't think this works with Excel tables. I'm going to say, I'll put that with a question mark. Doesn't work with Excel tables. I don't think. Maybe it does. I don't know. You give it a try. I could give it a try too, but I'm not going to keep this as the winning solution. So I really don't want to spend any more time on text to columns. Another newish one is TEXTSPLIT. Pros and cons of parsing, pulling apart, splitting with TEXTSPLIT would be, the pros are you could put what you want in separate columns and or in separate rows. Columns and or rows. And a pro would be, since it's a formula, it's a work hard once. It's a work hard once technique. You do one formula off to the side, and then future you gets to add new rows and new rows and new rows and append, and you don't have to write that formula ever again. It's just done. And the next time you export data, it automatically parses it apart. So who doesn't love work hard once techniques? Those are like my favorite ever. Cons is they are newish, so people don't know they exist. And I think they're only on like regular versions of Excel, meaning like Office 365. I don't know what year of Excel. There's not on older Excel. So if you work for a nonprofit, a state government agency, a local government agency, people who just like never get to have the latest version of Excel, which is so unfortunate, you're not going to have TEXTSPLIT, okay? Only in newer versions of Excel. Yeah. Let's do TEXTSPLIT, which is probably Anne's preferred method. Actually, is TEXTSPLIT going to work here? Because we don't have a delimiter. Well, TEXTSPLIT would work at least for the years, right? TEXTSPLIT equals TEXTSPLIT, open parentheses, and we're going to split it, this one, by, what is our column delimiter though? Because like between the 7 and the T, we don't have anything. I feel like I need to split on a number of spaces or something. I don't know. Honestly, I'd have to Google that one to see what we figure out. There's some way to use TEXTSPLIT for this one. That's the risk of doing it live is sometimes I don't know everything off the top of my head, and that's totally normal. All right. Yeah, I guess I should add that to the cons list is you might have to Google it when you get stuck to figure out all the customizations. Left, mid, right have been there the whole 20 years that I've been using Excel. Those are my go-tos. They're like my besties, you know, like my favorite pair of shoes or something. Left, mid, right, I love. TEXTSPLIT I only learned about, I think it was only officially released in like February. I learned about it at the Global Excel Summit in London. And these have been around since like I was, you know, since I was in college, 20 years ago now. So pros of these is they are available on all versions of Excel. And I would say like a really minimal learning curve, especially with left and right. People learn them once and then they're like, oh, that makes so much sense. Where text split has all of those arguments that you have to fill in. And even me, I'm like, oh, wait, I have to Google like if I need that one or not, or how do I do it in that specific way? Left, mid, right are just so straightforward. I love them. What would some cons of these be? Cons of left, mid, and right. Mid has a learning curve. That one just takes a little bit. Has a mid amount of a learning curve. There's not many cons to that. Pros, I mean, same thing as before too, that because it's a formula or a function, it's a work hard once technique. Work hard once. Are you enjoying the difference between edited YouTube videos and live YouTube videos? You get to see all my typos when I'm live. All right, let me show you left. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this formula because this is the one that I love. I love this one. Left. And we're taking the left of this. Zoom. Okay. Left is equals left. You open the parentheses and you only have to fill in two things, which is pretty nice. The text that you want to split, which is that cell, comma, the number of characters. How many do we want? So this is where you count up each character, and Excel counts dashes as a character. It counts space bars as a character. So Excel would say, okay, if you want to split the dates right here, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 characters. Okay. And then it peels off the leftmost 10 characters. If you would do like a 2 here, it gives you the first 2 digits. If you would do a 15 here, it would peel off the 15 leftmost digits. Because these are all year, month, day, and look how the months are 2-digit months, which is really nice. Because if it was like a 5 instead of an 05, this technique wouldn't work exactly how this. You'd have to modify it more too, which is just, who wants to do that? More work. Okay, we're going to peel off the leftmost 10. You could do just the year. The left of this 4, you could do the month. You need, okay, so left pulls off the leftmost characters. I think you can guess what right would do. Right starts on the right and it peels off like however many you need. Mid pulls off anything in the middle. So let's say you just wanted the month in its own column. Like I just want the 02. I just want the 05. Mid is just like, it's a little bit more of a learning curve because, I warned you, right? It takes a little bit longer for the newbies. Equals mid, open the parentheses, and you have to fill in 3 things this time. So it's still the text. That's that one. Comma. I know this is like font size 2. When you see it on your screen, I wish Excel would make this bigger. It says start num and then number of characters. Okay, so start num is like what number digit is this O of the O2 or the 0 for the 02? It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 0 is the 6th one from the left. 6th one over. And then how many characters do you want to go over? You want to do 1, 2. Okay, so it's 6, comma 2. And then you get the O2. If you wanted to pull off just the days, day with mid, it would be equals mid. Here is the text. And the days start on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And they go over for 2. Okay. Mid. The text you want to split. Where does it start? How far to go over? Tap, tap, fill it down. All of these variables could feed into a pivot table and therefore a graph. You could also use these variables with sum ifs, count ifs, anything else you needed. All right, that's the basics of parsing, text to columns, text split, left, mid, right. But then you often have to do a second layer of editing to do fine tuning. And this is the one I really, really, really want to show you. Actually, I can show you those too. This is the most important, date value. It takes things that Excel doesn't necessarily recognize as dates, because there's a lot of different variable types, right? There's like, you might have numbers, you might have currency, you might have dates, you might have words, and it just makes sure that everything is a date so that it can be treated like dates in pivot tables and in graphs. Turns everything into dates. Year, month, day, parse apart the dates. And concat joins them back together. They concatenate many, many, many times in spreadsheets. This is not just Excel. This is like all data sets, all spreadsheet systems. You have to pull things apart, parse them apart, and then you might have to push them back together sometimes too. Pull apart, push together, like super normal. All of these obviously are faster than doing them by hand, which is the long, hard way. The worst way to do things is by hand. All right, let me show you date value, because if you, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you one more con of these. Which one doesn't work with Excel tables? That one, question mark, doesn't work with Excel tables. I don't think TextSplit works with Excel tables. I don't think it does. I feel like I Googled this last Friday afternoon when I was stuck. I don't think it does. And I feel like all of the everything online I found was just kind of like, sorry, like Microsoft didn't design it that way. It just doesn't. Okay. This is a regular table, a lowercase t table though. So let me add another pivot table. Insert pivot table. I'm just going to put it on the existing worksheet over here. Put it like down there so I don't have too many sheets going on. All right, and let's say you wanted to use okay, so we know that the regular date doesn't work. It's just repeats all the gobbledygook. We know that text to columns does work. Excel recognizes those as dates and condenses them, or you can expand them accordingly. Let's get rid of all those. Toss, toss, toss to the side. The text split. Oh, I didn't fully finish that one. That would also work. Left works. So, well, sort of. It makes things that look like dates, but see how Excel doesn't condense them? So that's where we have to do that second layer of fine tuning and editing. The year with left sort of works. Excel recognizes, it knows that these are numbers. It doesn't actually recognize those as dates though. We have to do some fine tuning. Okay, so some fine tuning that we would need to do. These kind of look like dates, but they're not. See how even up here it says general, you can change these to dates. It doesn't matter. Like those are actually not dates. This is not a date. That's not a date. That's not a date. That's not a date. The only one that turned it into date was text to columns. Yeah, text to columns recognized as dates. I should put that on our pros and cons list, right? Text to columns, pros. Actually, pros and cons for these are getting spaced out. Recognizes dates right away. No need for a second round of formatting. That is nice. That is actually really, really nice. Okay, let me show you how you would turn these more into dates. Date value. You say equals date value, and then you click on the thing that's not exactly a date. And then it turns it into, and then you're like, and I thought it was going to be a date. It's giving me 45 bajillion. What is that? Well, that's because Excel stores dates as numbers. You just have to go up here. You just have to click the button up here and you turn it into a date. Okay. Excel has a calendar. You know how different cultures and religions have calendars? Like, this is when our world started, or there's like the Mayan calendar, there's the Christian calendar, there's the Chinese New Year is different from my American New Year. Okay. Excel also has a calendar like that. And in Excel's calendar, day one was January 1st, 1900. That is the first day of Excel's calendar. So this date is also known as day one, number one. Okay. Today's date is, what is it? We're on July 28th, which is also known as 45,866 days since Excel's calendar started. Okay. So anytime you see, if you're looking for a date and it's like gives you all the big, huge numbers, remember it's part of Excel's like Bible calendar thing. You just have to go up here, home tab, number format section, top center, and you see, yeah, it's a number. I don't want a number. I want a date. Maybe you want a long date. Like I just want just an easy date. Okay. Let's make a pivot table of this left turned into dates with date value, left plus date value, and it is going to work. Let's add another one. I'll show you. I'm going to put it in an existing worksheet so I don't have too many sheets open. As you know, that kind of drives me crazy. And the date value one looks like that. It's appropriately into dates. So then you could do some more dragging and dropping. Maybe we want to do like a average of variable B, something like that, which then you could graph. Okay. That's a kind of funny looking chart, but these are made up values. So that's what you get when you make up values with rand between. All right. It is a lot of work to think through all this stuff every time, but you would not in real life. Like you would learn them on this live stream and kind of learn like, oh, that's what parsing is. There are pros and cons of different parsing techniques. Typically, once you get some practice, you would just use one of these techniques. And typically you wouldn't do like a left in its own column and a date value. Typically, you would just do it in one fell swoop because this is only like 2 steps of the onion layer of formulas. It's not too complicated. Let's do left with date value. I'm going to make this spreadsheet available for you to download for free after the live stream. Just come back and look in the comments. I'll pin the comment that shows you how to download this so you can see all the formulas. Look, this is how I do it in real life. I'd be like, okay, I got gobbledygook from the database. No big deal. I'm going to just left this. I'm going to grab the 10 characters. And then it looks like a date, but it's not. And look, when you click up here, you're like, can I turn it? Can it say like if it's a Monday or a Tuesday? No, it's not actually a date. It's not a real date. So I would onion it. I would add another layer where I say, okay, that's the core formula. It's a left. That's the spirit of it. And on the outside, I would say, let me now date value it. Date value this whole thing. And you just kind of like customize like this. And then you're like, what is that? No big deal. It's just, Excel treats this the same behind the scenes. It does the same calculations and everything. It's just for my eyes, my brain would hurt if it was like 45,000 days. Okay. And then this is the column that you could use in your pivot table and then in your charts, or you could use that in your sum ifs or in your count ifs. All right, you learned text to columns, text split, left, mid, and right. Date value. These are not necessary for what we need to do, so just consider these kind of like bonus techniques for yourself. These are just really nice to have, and they kind of go in the date batch. Year, month, and day. Year, month, and day are like once you have something in date format, you can actually parse it apart more again, if you need to, which remember how I showed you in the pivot tables, like you can open these little toggles and it's already like parsed apart like that. Older versions of pivot tables didn't do that. So we had to do it by hand first. So these are typically optional. I really don't use these much at all in projects nowadays, now that pivot tables have been upgraded. But they're so easy. So I think you're going to love them. If you want to take this date and grab the year, you do equals year. And it's going to tell me just the 2025. It might add some zeros at the end. That's a super bizarre format. Why, Excel, why? So you can just tap the little button, tap, tap to decrease the decimal, and then do another tap, tap to fill it down. Month is equals month. You were right. You guessed it. Grab the full date, close the parentheses, press enter. It parses apart just the 2, not the 02, just the 2, which is kind of nice because who'd want to have like extra zeros all over the place? And then day is going to give me just the 27, just the 7, and so on. If you want to ever piece them back together, maybe you want to have like year dash month. For a lot of projects, I do year quarter. Doing quarters, that's a live stream for another day. You can put them back together with concatenation. Parse them apart, concatenate them back together, chain them back together. There's a couple ways to do concatenation. You can either do the really, really long mouthful equals concatenate. Newer versions of Excel have a shortened version equals concat, so that you don't have to type out all the letters and risk spelling them wrong. I personally prefer the ampersand technique because it's faster. You just save a second here, second there. Those seconds over the course of a career really do add up. So I'm going to show you the ampersand first because that's Anne's favorite. Ampersand is if you want year dash month, you do equals that and the month. And it's going to give me 2025 too. It's going to be all smushed. Year, smush, month. And then you're like, that is not easy on my eyes, Anne Emery. I thought you made things easier to read. So you go back in and you edit it. Maybe you want year dash month. Okay, this one is a cell reference. That's a color, right? Anything in that cell, letters, numbers, symbols, it's going to show up over here. And a dash, that's not a cell reference. That's why it gets the double quotes, because it's something I've like selected by hand off of my keyboard. And whatever lives in that cell. That's a cell reference. It's 02, so it doesn't need any double quotes. And then you get year dash month. Okay. Oh, yeah. You know what I was going to teach you next? Concat. Okay. This one I like because you can see like everything's just joined by an ampersand. It's just like, I think as easy as it possibly could be. I want this and I want this and I want this all chained together. You could do year, month with concat or concatenate. If you're on an old version of Excel, you have to type out part of the formula. I make typos in formulas all the time, so I try to avoid that. You have to open up the parentheses. This is where I'm just getting nitpicky about how long it takes. You choose the first thing, and then instead of an ampersand, we're doing a formula with arguments, so we do commas. Commas go inside functions like this. I want the year, comma, the month. Again, it's going to be year, smush, month. 2025 too, all smushed together. But just like before, we can go back in and edit it, okay? So you want the N2, comma, quotes, dash quotes, comma, whatever's in O2. And then you get the format that you want, okay? So the ampersand, a little bit less typing. There's nothing at the beginning. You just pick the first thing you want to chain together. Everything's separated by ampersands. In concat, you have to start typing equals concat, and everything is separated by a comma. You can add these into other formulas with the onion layer of editing. These could be part of a 2 or 3 or 4 layer onion if you needed them to be, or they work on their own. And then these variables can also go into pivot tables and therefore into graphs. Okay, so to recap what we've done over the past 36 minutes, you learned about parsing data, which is necessary, required, if you get weird database exports, which is like every freaking database does that nowadays. It just gives you really messy exports. I try to be proactive and I reach out to the database administrator and I say like, hey, like I received an export in this format. Is there any way to change the export settings so that we'd like get it in blah, blah, blah format? And usually they say, nope, that just is how it is. And then I'm like, okay, no big deal. Like I'll do a little left, mid, or right formula. Parsing could be text to columns, could be text split, it could be left, mid, right. You almost always have to do another small layer of editing. Like you might have to turn those into dates with date value. There are other projects I've worked on when I need to parse things apart with year, month, day, or I need to put them back together by concatenating them. Okay, I'm going to make this data set available for you to download in case you want to like click through or in case you want to have this like simple little cheat sheet. Like I said before, if you have any techniques to add to this list, if you have pros and cons to add to the list, let me know. I look forward to learning from you in the comments. All right, have a great Monday. See you later, everybody.